Hello, my name is Andrew Balio. I'm the principal trumpet of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, and I started with the BSO in 2001 after winning an audition at the invitation of the orchestra and Yuri Temirkanov. I had been playing in Israel Philharmonic before, and they invited me to come over and play for the committee and Maestro Temirkanov, and the rest is history. So once I got to New England Conservatory at the age of 17, I was very fortunate to have a full scholarship, yet I didn't feel like it was the right place for me. In fact, I didn't think I belonged in music anymore because it just seemed so it was just so, I don't know, they were just so over the top with all their 12-tone music and all these other requirements that seemed so different than the very things that had made me want to be a musician, which was that sense of flow and just playing beautiful music. So I decided to quit trumpet at that point, and I went and worked as a cook in a yoga ashram for 4 years. And that was, I learned a ton. It was really great. First of all, I learned about what real hard work is, working in the kitchen 7 days a week. And then after 4 years of that, I decided, well, maybe I need to do something for a living. And I know, being a cook doesn't really pay very well either. So I decided to pick up the trumpet again. But my great ambition was to be a very proficient amateur. I wanted to play in churches and just play. I wanted to play recitals and just sort of be free and enjoy music for the reasons that I had originally gone to study music. And I thought that much of the music business. Well, first of all, I didn't think I was very good. I didn't think I was good enough to make it in the music business either. And so I was looking for something else to do. But fortunately, I managed to get employed in a Mexican orchestra shortly after picking the trumpet up again and taking a bunch of lessons. And so I played in Mexico for 4 years. And then I went to the Israel Philharmonic for nearly a decade. So life had another plan for me. All of it was pretty much serendipity, including the BSO offer. That was very serendipitous. I was supposed to be in Nepal then. I was taking 2 months off to just hike in the Himalayas. And BSO called and they offered me a week. And so before I went to Nepal, I stopped in Baltimore. And I was just, everything just clicked with the people in the orchestra. But it wasn't until I was 30 years old that one of my closest friends who was playing first horn in the Munich Philharmonic, he sat me down. We were at the beach in Israel, and he said, "Andy, you're a professional musician now." And so I could no longer be in denial that I actually was fully in music, and I couldn't be happier to have spent a life doing that. What I have here is what's called a German trumpet. We've had a lot of our subscribers who ask me, what are these instruments you're playing? It looks like you're holding it like a hamburger. And they said, well, yeah, it's kind of like it's called a German trumpet. It has French horn valves, the rotary valves, and so these are valves, rather than going up and down, they rotate around in the cylinder. And what that does is it gives a smoother connection between notes. It's less abrupt. Also, the bell is much wider than a piston trumpet. It flares out differently, and the lead pipe is shorter. That is, before it hits the valve section, it comes much sooner. And so it has a kind of a different overtone series. And we like these German trumpets for the Germanic music because it has more similarities to the French horn. It helps us blend the horns more rather than sticking out. And but it's still very brilliant once you get to the bright end, or the loud end rather, and in the soft end it's much more mellow. And here's the same thing, again on the American piston trumpet, which is actually a French design. It was the French that gave us pistons on a bugle to make the trumpet. So you were commenting about the color difference of these instruments, and indeed, the internet can't really do justice to the color differences of these instruments. But I must tell you, the members of the Baltimore Symphony are very obsessive about the colors of the sounds that they make and the refinements of these instruments. I mean, every single section is there are certain there's this whole sound worlds that we're always experimenting with in order to make the most beautiful sound in the hall that we have, which is a really great hall, the Meyerhoff, as well as Strathmore. Posthorn was a forgotten instrument. Back in the good old days, the postman, at least over in Austria, Austria-Hungary, the postman would play on this little bugle kind of instrument, and after you dropped off your mail. So when you hear the postman play his posthorn, you knew your mail had arrived. So I think that's very civilized. We have a number of mutes here. This is a wooden mute made in Germany. There's a little aluminum mute made in the US that was an imitation of a French mute from 100 years ago. And this is a American wah-wah mute. And that, of course, we use that in jazz, but it shows, you never know, and sometimes in classical music we'll use those. And we have tons of mutes as trumpet players. And first of all, they don't cost very much. Their mutes are cheap, especially if you find them in a garage sale. You never know what kind of mute you're gonna find. You put it in, some of these beat up old mutes, they play amazingly well. Sometimes you buy a really fancy new mute, it comes in the mail and you take it out, it's dead as a doornail, it just doesn't play. So mutes are kind of hit or miss, and that's why we have so many of them. We have this grab bag of mutes. We're always experimenting until we find the mute that's the least uncomfortable to use. Well, it's only 3 pistons, so you'd think it's really easy because the piano has 88 keys, and clarinet has far more keys. So other instrumentalists are maybe busier with their fingers. But what makes trumpet difficult, like the other brass instruments, is the entire thing is balanced on our lips. I mean, you think of these other instruments that are operated mainly with with the arms and fingers. I mean, at least ergonomically. It relates to the instrument, and but the trumpet, we're actually setting up the whole thing from air going past our lips, and so it's quite a balancing act. I'm not quite sure if we were designed as humans, when lips and mouths were invented, that we would be making music with them. But it's quite remarkable the amount of music making trumpet players can manage. Off the lips. So I think that's probably the best answer to that question. It's just it's a very odd thing that takes a long time for young players to learn how to make a decent sound on a trumpet. For example, a piano, a beginning pianist just can make a sound quite easily, and even a violin makes sound immediately. Whereas when I was in 6th grade, when you were asking me when I started, it took me a full week just to make a simple sound, the low C. It just wasn't happening. brass players altogether are united by their obsession with air control, airflow study. So, you know, I have this little piece of Starbucks straw that I toot on that helps me work on these exercises for really stabilizing the air. And there's all sorts of other devices, like this is a mouthpiece that we cut out part of the brass, and I just blow through that, but it's, you know, it just sort of yet another type of exercise. So here we go. Here's a lead pipe with a piece of duct tape stuck on the end, and I blow into that for yet another type of air exercise. So brass players are all about the air. It's not about driving lots of air. It's about a little bit of air that that moves just so. So there's so much subtlety to it, really. And to your point, I went swimming. I swam about a mile this morning, and I try to swim most days of the week because, like a lot of brass players, exercise, but you know, often swimming is something that we do to get our air flowing. We just play better after exercising. You can never play the same thing the same way twice. There's always variations. So to try to play things the exact same way each time is sort of futile. So, but I have, when I've played that work, the composer sort of provides the difference there, where he doesn't ask you to play it differently, but because it keeps coming up over and over. In a sense, the listener is hearing it differently because they've been hearing it. And often we like to play the questioning part from different parts of the hall. You start one place, run over to another part of the hall, ask the question, same question again. You know, so it might be a metaphor for a lot of things. Posing the same question from different places, and the answer never comes.